I knew she was trouble the second she stepped onto that bus. It wasn't just the way she held her phone up like a shield, camera already rolling before she even found her footing. It wasn't even the way she pursed her lips like she was already composing a tweet about how oppressed she was. No, it was the way she looked at us, at me, like we were obstacles, background characters in a story where she was the misunderstood hero. She was tall, lean, draped in the kind of athleisure that costs more than a mortgage payment. Her bottle blonde. Hair was swept up in a messy bun that wasn't messy at all, and her eyes, hidden behind designer sunglasses, scanned the seats like she was picking out a handbag. She took a long, loud breath through her nose and then, loud enough for everyone to hear, sighed in exaggerated disbelief. You've got to be kidding me. The bus was packed. I knew that, the driver knew that, and every other passenger knew that. It was rush hour, and if she had an ounce of common sense, she would have seen that standing room was all that was left before she even climbed on board. But she wasn't the type to accept reality. No, she was the type to bend it to her will. Her voice rose like a siren, cutting through the low murmur of the bus. Are there seriously no seats left? None? Nobody answered. Nobody had to. The truth was all around her, but she wasn't interested in the truth. She was interested in a scene. She turned her head sharply, then gasped, when her eyes landed on me. She was already pointing before I could blink. You, she snapped. You should let me sit. I felt my pulse in my throat, but I stayed steady. Excuse me? She gestured to me with the manic energy of someone used to getting their way. Come on, I've had the longest day. My feet are killing me. You don't even look like you have anywhere important to be. A hush fell over the bus. Someone muttered under their breath. The driver's eyes flicked up to the rearview mirror, watching. I squared my shoulders. I paid for my seat just like everyone else. She scoffed. Oh, come on, you're... She hesitated, searching for the right words, then settled on. A nice lady, right? You wouldn't let me suffer like this. I recognized that tone. That honeyed condescension, the way she dripped fake sweetness over words that held no real kindness. I had heard it 1,000 times from women just like her. Women who saw someone, like me, and assumed I was here to make their lives easier. I sat up straighter. No! Her entire body jerked back like I'd slapped her. Excuse me? You heard me, I said, folding my hands in my lap. No. The murmuring picked up. A few smothered laughs. Someone whispered, Oh, hell no. Her lips parted, a second gasp already forming, but she caught herself and inhaled sharply. Then she turned, looking for a new target. Sir! She pointed at a man in his 20s, earbuds in. Would you... He held up a hand before she could finish. Nope! She spun, eyes wild. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. And then, because she was exactly who I knew she was, she pulled out her phone. The camera was already on, and suddenly her voice changed. I cannot believe what's happening right now, she said, eyes wide with performative horror. I'm on a public bus, and I just asked, politely, for someone to give up a seat for me, and everyone is just ignoring me. She turned her camera toward me. This woman right here? She just straight up refused. No reason, no apology, just no. Can you believe that? The driver's voice came over the speaker. Ma'am, no filming on the bus. She ignored him. Guys, she continued, her voice rising to that fake-friendly influencer tone. I don't know if you can see this, but this is exactly what's wrong with our society. Where is common courtesy? Where is kindness? The bus driver stood up. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to turn off your phone. She blinked. Are you serious? Company policy? No filming? Oh, this is ridiculous, she huffed. But she lowered the phone. Barely. I was just trying to document my experience. People need to know how rude. A woman in the back cut her off. Ain't you that lady from the Starbucks video? The bus went still. The woman turned, her lips twitching. What? Oh, yeah, a guy near the middle called out. I remember you. You freaked out 'cause they got your order wrong. A ripple of recognition moved through the bus. She threw a drink at the barista. She called corporate right there in the store. She went live and said she was being discriminated against. I watched her face go red, then white, then red again. That wasn't... She started, but the laughter was growing. Someone else pulled out their phone. "Hey, y'all," a woman called, grinning. "Look who's back at it again." The bus driver sighed, already reaching for his radio. "Ma'am," he said, "you're going to have to step off the bus." "What?" She whirled on him. "You're kicking me off?" "For what?" "Disturbing passengers." "Oh, come on. This is insane." The driver lifted the radio. "I'll call the cops if I have to." For a second, she just stood there, chest heaving, nails biting into the strap of her bag. Then she made her mistake. She reached out, fast, desperate, and grabbed my shoulder. The moment her fingers closed, the bus erupted. Hell no. She did not just put hands on her. Oh, she's done. The driver was already moving, stepping between us, voice raised. "That's it. I'm calling the police." She let go like I had burned her. No, Nobody was listening. The murmuring had turned to full-blown chaos, people pulling out phones, recording, talking over each other. I stayed rooted in my seat, my heart hammering, watching as the driver keyed in a call for assistance. And in the distance, the faint sound of sirens began to wail. The woman... Oh, she heard them. I saw it in the way her shoulders stiffened, her fingers twitching at her sides like she was trying to decide whether to double down or play the victim. I had seen this type before. The ones who could flip their entire demeanor like a light switch when the consequences started closing in. She chose defiance. "This is absurd!" she shrieked, spinning toward the driver. "I didn't do anything wrong. I was just asking for a seat, and now I'm getting arrested." "Nobody said anything about arrested," the driver said flatly, keeping his radio pressed to his mouth. "But you are getting off this bus." "I paid for this ride," she shot back. "I have every right to be here, and I'm being harassed." The word hung in the air like a baited hook. She was fishing for someone, anyone, to take her side. But nobody bit. "Oh, now she's being harassed?" a man scoffed. "That's rich." A woman a few rows ahead shook her head, still recording. "You put your hands on somebody, lady. You gotta go." But she wasn't listening. She was already pivoting, changing her approach. She turned her camera back on, aiming it at her own face, her eyes wide, her voice shaking just enough to sound rehearsed. "I can't believe this is happening," she said, breathless. "I'm on public transportation, minding my own business, and I asked, politely might I add, for a seat, and now people are threatening me. I am fearing for my safety." "Oh, please," someone muttered. "I'm a woman, alone, in a hostile environment," she continued, turning the camera dramatically from her face to the other passengers. "And I'm being verbally attacked. This is discrimination. This is harassment. This is..." A sharp knock on the bus door cut her off. The cops were here. 2 officers, both in dark uniforms, stood just outside. The driver sighed, relief and exhaustion weighing down his shoulders as he pulled the lever, letting the doors hiss open. The lead officer, a tall man with a sharp jaw, stepped up. He took one sweeping look at the bus, the way everyone was watching, recording, waiting. His gaze settled on the woman, who immediately squared her shoulders and plastered on a look of righteous indignation. "Ma'am," he started, his voice firm but calm. "We received a report of a disturbance." She pounced on the opportunity. "Yes, officer. Thank God you're here." She pressed a hand to her chest, inhaling shakily, angling herself just enough so her camera caught her best side. "I am being harassed, verbally assaulted, and threatened on this bus. These people refused to accommodate me, and when I tried to address the issue, I was met with hostility." The officer's eyes flicked to the driver. "That true?" The driver let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Not even close," the woman gasped. "Excuse me? Are you calling me a liar?" The second officer, a woman with a tight bun and tired eyes, stepped forward. "Why don't we all take a breath?" The woman turned the camera toward her. "I have this all on film. I was asking for a seat, that's all. And this woman here..." She pointed directly at me, her nails painted the same shade as her overpriced leggings. Refused to give it up. She was aggressive. The entire bus ganged up on me. I was physically assaulted. I blinked. What? The whole bus erupted in outrage. Lying ass. Oh, she crazy. Lady, you touched her. We all saw it. The male officer lifted a hand, signaling for quiet. His partner took a step closer. Did someone actually put hands on you? Yes, the woman insisted, but there was a crack in her voice now, a slight hesitation. Then I'm sure you won't mind showing us the footage. Her phone lowered an inch. Excuse me? The officer nodded toward the phone. You said you got it all on film, right? You said you were physically assaulted. Let's see it. A beat of silence. A long, pregnant pause. Her grip tightened around the phone. I don't need to prove anything. You should be questioning them. Ma'am, the officer sighed. If you're claiming assault, we need evidence. The woman licked her lips. It might not be clear in the footage. A chuckle rippled through the passengers. Thought so, someone murmured. The officer glanced at the driver. Sir, what do you want to do here? The driver crossed his arms. She's disturbing the ride. I want her off the bus. Gladly, the male officer said. The woman's eyes blew wide. What? No, you're seriously kicking me off instead of them? Ma'am, step off the bus. This is insane, she screeched. You're all ganging up on me. I have rights. I'll have your jobs for this. She turned, her camera back up, streaming live again. Do you see this, guys? I'm being removed from a public bus for no reason. The police are discriminating against me. This is what oppression looks like. Nobody cared. Let's go, the officer repeated. She didn't move. Ma'am, no. This is harassment. This is abuse. I demand to speak to your superior. The officers shared a look, and before she could finish that sentence, they moved in. No. No! Get off me! Don't touch me! The bus rocked as she flailed, limbs jerking, shrieking as they took hold of her arms. Oh, damn, someone muttered. They really doing it. They tried to be gentle at first, but she was writhing, yanking. Back like a child mid-tantrum, her sunglasses knocked askew, her bun unraveling, voice climbing into an unhinged screech. The cops had no choice. They tackled her. The moment she hit the ground, a new wave of gasps and laughter rippled through the bus. She was kicking, howling, nails clawing at pavement as they pinned her arms behind her back. This is abuse, she screamed. The officers didn't respond. The only sound was the rustle of handcuffs snapping shut, and then, the moment that sent the entire bus over the edge, a single plastic blonde extension drifted down from her head to the concrete. Silence. And then, the bus exploded with laughter. The woman's screeches turned guttural, humiliated, feral as they dragged her toward the squad car, but then, something unexpected. One of the officers, just before shoving her inside, pulled out his phone and checked something. His eyebrows furrowed. He looked at his partner, then at the woman. Wait a second, he muttered. Isn't this... The laughter slowed. Heads tilted. What? Someone asked. The officer turned his screen toward his partner, and the woman's whole body went. Still, I craned my neck, and just as I got a glimpse of what was on the screen, her face, from another video, something bigger, and then she looked at me, and for the first time since she stepped on this bus, she looked afraid. I didn't know why, not yet, but the shift was instant. One moment she was all fury, screaming and thrashing like a wild thing. The next, her breath hitched, her body going rigid. It wasn't just the officers restraining her. No, this was something else. She had seen something on that screen. The taller officer turned the phone toward his partner, who raised an eyebrow before glancing down at the woman still pinned against the pavement. Is this you? She twisted, trying to see, but they weren't giving her the chance. The moment they loosened their grip, she'd bolt. I could feel it. The bus was dead silent now, every passenger hanging on the moment. Cameras still rolling. I don't know. What you're talking about, she spat, her voice high and tight. This is ridiculous. You're treating me like a criminal. For what? The shorter officer hummed, tapping the phone screen. Well, ma'am, according to this, you might actually be one. A ripple of murmurs passed through the bus. The tall officer sighed. glancing at the phone again. His lips parted like he was about to say something. Then he stopped, looked at his partner, then back at the woman. "Go ahead and run her name," he muttered. Her whole body flinched. "Wait, what?" "No, you can't do that." "We absolutely can," the officer replied, already reaching for his radio. "Especially if there's a reason to." "There's no reason. I didn't do anything." But the panic was creeping in now, her voice shaking, a fine layer of sweat breaking out along her forehead. The radio crackled as the officer rattled off her name, spelling it out phonetically. The moment it left his mouth, something shifted in the air. Recognition. Not from the passengers, not from me. From the cop holding the radio. His brows pulled together, his grip tightening just slightly. His partner noticed, exchanging a look before glancing back down at the woman, who was very suddenly very quiet. The response came quick. "Repeat that name?" The officer did. Silence. Then, "Hold for confirmation." The woman jerked forward, but the officers had already anticipated it. They tightened their grip, pressing her back down against the pavement. "This is insane," she shrieked. "I demand a lawyer?" Someone on the bus snorted. "What already?" The taller cop exhaled through his nose, shifting his stance. He was holding something back, something he wasn't ready to say yet. And then, the radio crackled again. The voice, on the other end, was sharper this time. Clipped, urgent. "We need a unit to confirm detainment." A pause. "Do not let her leave." The taller officer blinked. "Confirm? Confirm." A beat of silence. Then, the bus doors whooshed open. Another officer, this one in plain clothes, badge swinging from his belt, stepped inside. He was older, solid, the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to command a room. His eyes scanned the bus, briefly flicking over me, before locking onto the scene outside. He took in the restrained woman, the two officers, the phones, recording, and then his face darkened. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. "It's really her." The woman's breathing hitched. "No," she whispered. "No. No. No." The officer turned to his colleagues. "Cuff her properly. Now." They didn't hesitate. The metal clinked tighter, locking around her wrists. She exploded. "This is insanity. I am not a criminal." The older officer ignored, her pulling out his phone. "Yeah," he muttered, pacing a few steps away. "We got her. Send them now." The woman went deathly still. Then her head whipped toward me. "You!" she hissed. I stiffened. "Me? You! This is your fault! If you had just moved, just given me the damn seat!" A man up front cackled. "Lady, you were cooked the moment you walked on this bus." She thrashed again, but it was weak, desperate. The sirens were getting louder. More vehicles. Not just for a bus disturbance, no, this was bigger. The officer hung up, exhaling through his nose before stepping closer. The woman shook her head frantically. No, listen, this is a mistake. I have rights. Save it," he said flatly. Then finally, he turned to the passengers. He scanned the faces, taking in the phones still rolling, the wide eyes, the hushed murmurs. Then, in a voice calm, steady, but loud enough for everyone to hear, "This woman is wanted in an active investigation." A collective gasp rippled through the bus. I leaned forward. "For what?" The woman lurched against her cuffs. "Lies!" The officer didn't even look at her. Instead, he turned his screen outward, toward us, toward me. And then, I saw it. News article still open on his phone, a headline, a name, her name, and underneath, a photo, her face, not from today, from another incident, and next to it, a mugshot, the kind that said, "This wasn't the first time." I exhaled sharply, the air rushing from my lungs like I'd been punched. No wonder she looked afraid. No wonder she wanted off this bus. She hadn't just been here to make a scene. She had been running. And now, she was caught. The bus was dead silent. Then finally the officer lifted his eyes, locking onto her trembling form. "Long way from home, aren't you?" She didn't answer. She didn't say a word, because she knew, And we all knew. She was done. But the universe wasn't done with her. The air inside the bus felt thick, heavy, like we were all holding our breath, watching the final moments of a long, slow car crash. The woman, whose name I now knew, whose crimes I hadn't yet heard but could feel in the way the cops tightened their grips, was no longer fighting, no longer screaming. She was trembling. "I want my lawyer," she whispered, voice hoarse. The plainclothes officer scoffed. "Yeah, I bet you do." The wail of more sirens split the air as another police cruiser screeched to a stop just outside the bus. 2 more officers stepped out, and the older officer waved them over. "Take her." The 2 uniformed cops exchanged looks. "You sure? This just became much bigger than a bus ride." The woman twisted to look at him, but her words failed her. Maybe she realized the performance was over. Maybe she understood, in that moment, that this was no longer a battle of wits, no longer a chance to play the victim. The law had finally caught up, and there was no influencer live stream, no dramatic monologue, no carefully angled camera that could get her out of it. One of the new officers clipped her cuffs to a belt restraint, keeping her arms pinned. She yelped at the motion, but it wasn't a scream anymore. It was weaker, fading. As they dragged her to the cruiser, the first cop, tall, sharp-jawed, still gripping his radio, leaned toward the plainclothes officer. "What exactly are we dealing with here?" The older cop exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "She's been wanted for months. Multiple fraud charges, dozens of false harassment claims, extortion, online scams. Hell, she even faked a medical condition to crowdfund money." A collective murmur of shock rippled through the passengers. "And," he continued, "she had an active bench warrant for skipping a court date." The bus let out a collective oof. "Oh, she cooked," someone muttered. "Damn." "And she thought we were the problem?" A few chuckles, but mostly it was stunned silence. "All this time we thought we were just dealing with an entitled lunatic. Turns out, she was much worse. She was a professional liar. And today, she had picked the absolute worst place to lie. She was shoved into the back of the second cruiser. The officer standing next to the door gave it 2 sharp slams with his fist before signaling to the driver. The engine rumbled to life, the lights flickering red and blue against the bus windows. And just before the door slammed shut, I saw her face one last time. The wildness was gone. The rage had melted. And for the first time since she stepped onto that bus, since she looked me in the eyes and demanded I give her my seat, she looked small. The cruisers pulled away, and just like that, she was gone. The second she was out of sight, the tension in the bus snapped like a rubber band. The silence was shattered by laughter, relieved sighs, and a chorus of disbelief. "Yo, we just witnessed history. That woman tried to ruin our day and ruined her whole life. I knew I recognized her. Man, she picked the wrong damn bus." I exhaled deeply, shaking my head as I finally relaxed into my seat. The driver wiped a hand down his face. "Lord, I knew today was going to be a mess when I clocked in." A younger woman across from me was already typing furiously on her phone, her nails clacking against the screen. "I'm posting this everywhere. This is justice." The man sitting beside her grinned. "She wanted to go viral. Now she's a meme." The words made me pause. I glanced down at my own phone, which was still resting in my lap, and tapped the screen. Notifications flooded the screen. Videos from inside this bus were already circulating online. I scrolled. One clip. Someone had caught her full meltdown, from the moment she screamed about a seat to the moment the cops tackled her. Another clip. A slow-motion zoom-in of her blonde hair extension tumbling onto the pavement. One more. Her mugshot, next to a selfie she had posted just 2 days ago, grinning, perfect, claiming she was on a luxury retreat. The comments? Brutal. This woman needs to be studied by scientists. Did she really just throw away her freedom over a bus seat? Her whole career is over. OVER, her brand was being a victim. Now she's a convicted felon. Poetic justice. It was surreal. I had seen online takedowns before, but never like this. Never in real time. This wasn't just consequences. This was reckoning. I leaned back, staring at the screen, at the endless flood of reactions, and finally, I let out a laugh, a deep, rich belly laugh. Because if that wasn't the most poetic end to this disaster, I didn't know what was. The driver cleared his throat. All right, folks, sorry for the delay. Let's get back en route. A few people clapped. Someone yelled, "Driver of the year, bro!" The bus lurched forward, and just like that, we were moving again. I let my head rest against the window, watching the city roll by, feeling the hum of the road beneath me, and somewhere out there, in a jail cell, she was probably still screaming about how unfair it all was. But this time, nobody was listening.